All Things Conceivable, a surrogacy podcast with Nazca Fontes.
Welcome, listeners, and thank you for joining me on All Things Conceivable. Today, we have a really extraordinary guest. And if you know anything about me by now, you know that I'm always inspired by the idea that empowered women empower women. And today, I'm honored to speak with someone who embodies just that very spirit. You know, life can change in an instant. One moment, you're celebrating your future, and the next, everything can look very, very different. And that's exactly what happened to Rachelle Chapman in 2010, when a playful push at her bachelorette party led to a life-altering spinal cord injury. Doctors at that time told her that she would never walk again, but that didn't mean that she was done writing her story. Today, Rachelle is a wife, mother, influencer, and fierce advocate, proving that life's biggest challenges can lead to extraordinary opportunities. Her journey to motherhood, of course, made possible through surrogacy, is a testament to resilience, love, and the power of community. With a dedicated following over 350,000, she's using her voice to educate, inspire, and break down barriers for families navigating surrogacy and life with a disability. Her story's been featured on The Today Show, People, and beyond, but more importantly, she's redefining what's possible every single day. Now, as she considers expanding her family once again, Rachelle continues to challenge misconceptions, share her truth, and show the world that with determination and the right support, anything is possible. Welcome, Rachelle. I would absolutely love to hear your story, and I know that our listeners would love to hear it from you directly.
Absolutely. In 2010, I was engaged. I had graduated college, and we were actually really young, but we had bought our first house. I had a job that I really loved. I was working with senior citizens, and I was running my own senior center. So, they were really active seniors. So I was teaching line dancing and aerobics and planning parties, and that was like my dream job. It was so much fun. And my wedding was set for June of 2010. So in May, I had my bachelorette party. My husband went camping with his dad, and I went to Virginia Beach with my friends, where I'm from, and we had my bachelorette party, and it was like the best night ever. It was so much fun. And at the end of the night, we decided to go back to my friend's house and go for a swim. We were really tired, and from the night out, and we decided to swim. So I remember going upstairs, putting on my bathing suit, running downstairs, and I was standing on the side of the pool. And it was still May, so it was kind of chilly, so I hesitated. And I was just standing there, but my friend was just being playful, but she pushed me in my upper back, and I went forward, and I ended up going head first into the pool. It happened to be the shallow end, and when I hit the bottom, I ended up breaking my neck, and that actually caused me to become paralyzed. My vertebrae went into my spinal cord. It was completely instant. I couldn't move. And that's the night my life changed forever.
You know, what's so interesting, Rachelle, is I remember this story in the media years ago, right? You're pretty, unfortunately, but, famously well known for this incident. And it was really, it was ubiquitous. We could find this story everywhere, and it was just such a tragic thing to read in the moment. And, fast forward to preparing for this podcast with you and realizing that you were one and the same person. And just, to hear your story and how you were able to, over the course of, many years, and the love and support of your husband and family and community, overcome this challenge and the subsequent disability that this tragedy brought upon you. But, your story has been featured in major media outlets like TLC, People, I mentioned the Today Show and beyond. And of course, your incredible social media following. So through your story and this tragedy and being able to overcome it, how do you every day empower other women through sharing your journey?
Well, I love to empower. I first started out on Facebook. There wasn't even an Instagram because this was in 2010. And I got a really big following, but what I found from that following is, yes, I was inspiring a lot of women, but particularly a lot of women with disabilities. There's not a lot of especially in 2010, there weren't a lot of things out there to look at. If somebody got hurt, they couldn't be like, oh, that person, they live their life normal, so I can live my life normal. There was really not a lot out there. And so I think I offered a lot of people a lot of hope, especially people who were injured after I was injured. A lot of, physical therapists and doctors and nurses knew my story, so they would, tell people to come to my page. And one of the messages that I love is, there was a mom whose daughter was paralyzed. She was really, really young, maybe 10 years old. And obviously, as a mom, you think about their future. And she saw me being a mom and a wife and, doing all these sports. And she was like, because of you, I know that's possible for my daughter. And it makes me feel better, like about her future. And that definitely meant a lot to me. So I think just showing my life and, just being happy and all the stuff that I do and the traveling and the sports show people that you can overcome things and live a happy life.
There's so much to grab onto with your story and how inspirational you are. But no doubt our listeners want to, there's probably a curiosity about those early days before perhaps you know, regained your spirit and your purpose and your perspective on life. Can we just talk very briefly about maybe those early days, immediately following the injury, and how you had to kind of cope with your new reality and how you progressed through that to become the inspiration that you are. Tell our listeners a little bit about those early days. And obviously it put your wedding on hold for a year and you really had to live with your new reality.
Yeah, so what's interesting is, so I talked about my job in college, but my major was Parks and Recreation, and I had this one class, and it was called Inclusive Recreation, and it was about like adapted sports and things like that. And it's weird because I was obviously able-bodied, and there was this movie called Murder Ball, and it was about the Paralympic wheelchair rugby team. And to play that sport, you have to be a quadriplegic, which is what I am, impairment in all four limbs. I'll kind of get to like the function that I have later, but um, I saw this movie and I was like, wow, those guys are so cool. Like they're living their life. And what was interesting is when I got hurt, I remembered that movie because I had the same injury. I had the same function those guys had. And I remember being like, well, they are playing this awesome sport and living their life. And so can I. So I was kind of like, I don't want to say prepared. I just want to say, I guess I could say I was more insightful into what my life could be more than somebody who was injured who maybe didn't have that class. And so it really motivated me to want to be as strong as those guys and, you know, use my humor like those guys did. And I really used a lot of humor to get through those first months for sure. And really, it was taking it day by day. Like, I didn't even think about my future, really. I wasn't like, what's life going to be like in a year, 2 years? Like, it was literally about just getting to the next day. And that was a lot easier for me to process. And I guess that's my advice to people going through anything traumatic or difficult is it's a lot to think about when you think about your whole rest of your life or a month or 2 months or 3 months from now. I was really focused on just getting to the next day, and having the best day that I could. And if I had a bad day, sleeping it off and like not to bringing it to the next day. But that doesn't mean I didn't have days that were awful. Like I said, I definitely cried and I missed dancing. Dancing was like one thing that I absolutely loved, and that's not something that you can like that I wasn't going to be able to really do again. And so that was really difficult. But like I said, just going day to day, remembering that I could live a good life, that I did have the support system, that really definitely helped me.
And clearly, those who have looked into your story and perhaps have, all of your social media followers, we know that you actually live a very full and robust life. And you are able to accomplish quite a bit physically. And so, you mentioned that you want to explain to us a little bit about what quadriplegia really is versus perhaps paraplegia. So why don't you share with us a little bit about the differences and what you are able to do physically to accomplish your everyday tasks and to live your full life?
Yeah, so I'm technically a quadriplegic. So what a quadriplegic is somebody who has impairment in four limbs. I think there's a big misconception that somebody has a neck injury and they're a quadriplegic that they can't move from the neck down. And while that's possible with a very, very high neck injury, for me, I ended up breaking my it's called their C6. So my cervical bone, the sixth bone down, is what burst and went into my spinal cord. And a typical C6 is really what I am. So I have really, really good shoulders and biceps. Like I have really huge biceps, really strong wrists, but my triceps are barely there, and I have zero finger function. So, but yeah, like I said, I'm a quadriplegic because I have those impairments in my upper limbs. So the way I do a lot of things is, oh gosh, I'm going to use like a big word right here, but it's called tendonesis. So like if you like put your arm out and like dangle your hand down and then lift your wrist back, your fingers will actually kind of curl in on their own. And so that's how I pick things up. I wrap my fingers around things and put my wrist back, and then I'm able to pick things up. Even something as small as like a Skittle, I can pick things up. So even though the fingers actually don't move, so it's really hard to explain over like a podcast, but that's kind of how I do things. I actually have a video on YouTube that shows me doing a bunch of different things with my hands to show people how I use them, even though the fingers are paralyzed. And obviously, like a paraplegic is somebody who has impairment in two limbs, so their upper limbs are completely functional. But yeah, so I'm paralyzed from the chest down too, so I don't have any abs or things like that. So I can't like sit on the edge of the bed and just sit up or anything like that. I have to use my arms to stabilize. So that's pretty much my function.
And it's a great way to describe and provide distinction, because I do think a lot of folks think that quadriplegia means zero function of your arms, but you have quite a
Right.
bit. And in fact, you have a lot of videos that showcase your ability to put on makeup, to
Hmm.
actually drive a car. I found that fascinating. I really didn't
Oh yeah.
realize how some of those mechanics worked, right? And the support that you could get in a car to be able to drive it. So you actually are very high functioning physically.
Yeah, so I do still need help. I'm really grateful that I have my mom around. Chris is a teacher, so obviously he works a lot, but also he's very helpful. So there's like a little, for example, getting dressed. Like I've done it by myself before, especially with sweatpants. They're like easier to put on than like a pair of jeans or something. But it takes so long that I have to kind of decide, do I want to be completely independent today, or do I want to like do more stuff today? So time is a real thing because everything takes a little bit longer for us. So I do get help with a few things, but there is a lot that I can obviously do by myself.
Well, you have certainly made it your mission, and you have accomplished the desire to be inspirational to others through sharing your story.
Yeah, thank you.
You've used this experience to make the most of each day, and you've even said, "Why waste your time harping on insignificant things and the small things? Believe in defining your life by the positive moments, and not the
Hmm.
negative moments." So, really, how do you live that every day? And maybe, I bet that Chris plays a large role in this too, right? You have a
Yeah,
fantastic partner.
I'm really, really lucky. Yeah, because we both are. Like we obviously are obsessed with each other. We love each other so much, and we both bring something to the relationship that the other person has a really hard time with. So, for me, like he's a really big support system. He's physically really helpful, and I know that he's always there. And for him, he has a lot of anxiety. Like he'll get really, really stressed out about stuff, and he just has like typical anxiety, and I'm like a very, very calm, like whatever, dude, like kind of a really chill person, and so I balance him out that way. And so like we're really, really good for each other, and I definitely wouldn't be where I am without him, obviously.
And you did have to delay your wedding by, I think it was about a year after your accident. You were due to get married a month after this accident, but you got delayed. Um,
Hmm.
to
Yeah.
maybe share with our listeners again, there's probably a lot of curiosity. Like, how did the two of you navigate that over the course of the year post injury?
Yeah, it was a lot. I mean, I think if we had been left by ourselves, like without any outside help, it would have been 10 times more difficult. But because I have like my mom and like the rest of my family, it really took a lot off of us, like in him, and just doing things by ourselves. But we just like he was in the media. He said this all the time. his quote is, when it happened, it wasn't what am I going to do? It's what are we going to do? That's what he always said. And I don't think either of us ever thought for a second that we wouldn't be together. A lot of people asked me, like, did you tell him he could leave? Like if he wanted to peace out because he didn't sign up for this, did you say that to him? And I was like, well, no, because if the roles were reversed and he was like, you can go, I would have been like, shut up. No, like, what are you talking about? Like, I would have been like offended, I'd have been like, I love you more than that. Like that I would obviously never leave you. And so I knew that he wouldn't have wanted to hear that from me at all. And it's just kind of like we know each other so well, and that the love that the other has for each other, that I don't think either of us thought that it would be the end of us. And plus, I do think there are unfortunately statistically like a lot of relationships end after an accident like this. And I think again, people are thinking into the future and they're assuming what the future will look like. And obviously, the first month and the function that you have and the life that you have in that first month in the hospital is not going to be your life the rest of your life. And so I think people just like get scared that first, couple months and they leave, and it sucks that they do that, obviously. But life gets so much easier as you go on, and I just wish people would stick it out.
Sure, it's like any, big life-altering hardship. Sometimes it's so hard to see beyond your immediate reality. It really is.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you just kind of have to, see the storm there and just try and ride it out, and then, see what life is like after that huge wave of trauma, because it might be different.
That's a great way to phrase it. Ride out the
Hmm.
storm. Storms do not last forever, right?
That's right.
Let's talk a little bit about becoming a mom and kind of how you and Chris navigated that, because you've shared that the first thing that you asked while laying on the side of that pool back in 2010 when the EMTs arrived was asking them if you could still have kids. Like that was one of your very first thoughts. And so
Yeah.
obviously that loomed large for you and for Chris eventually. So, you know, talk to us a little bit about your journey towards parenthood in the early years after you got married and, realizing that surrogacy was going to be your path to motherhood.
Yeah, so a couple of years after I was hurt, we're obviously way more stable. We're married, we're talking about kids. And I had planned on possibly doing it myself because the EMT said, yes, you can still have kids. Because paralysis, it affects your muscles and a few things within your nervous system because I had such a high level injury. But it doesn't affect like your reproductive system or your organs, or things like that. So it's still possible to be pregnant and carry a baby. And there's a lot of people with spinal cord injuries that do have done that. But for me, so I went to the doctor, and one of the things that is affected by my spinal cord injury, and again, a lot of high level spinal cord injury, is blood pressure because that's part of your nervous system. And so our blood pressure is way lower than a typical person. And mine was extra low to the point where I needed medicine to keep it up. Like, for example, like the first 3 months that I was in the hospital, even with medicine, I would pass out all the time because my blood pressure was so low. And so it got better, but I still needed the medication. And so when I talked to a doctor, they were saying that medication is like an absolute no go. Like, you can't be taking medicine that makes your blood pressure higher because like obviously goes into your baby's system, and they don't need that, and it's not good for them. And then also I couldn't not take it because I would have passed out all the time. So after speaking to a doctor, I was really in a catch 22. There was really no way to do it. And so I wrote a blog about wanting to be a mom and wanting to go the route of surrogacy, once I found out that it wouldn't be great if I did it myself. And I put that blog out there, and out of nowhere, this is pretty crazy, but a friend from college reached out, and literally I only knew her for a couple months through Chris because she was older, so she graduated like shortly after I got there. But we were Facebook friends, and we had just stayed Facebook friends, even though we weren't really talking on Facebook or anything. We had lost touch, and she just reached out and said, "I've thought of being a surrogate, and I would totally do it for you." And she said she would do it for free. And that was like crazy. And we met them, and she lives like 4 hours away, which is not bad at all. And we had dinner and we talked about it and we moved forward, and she was my surrogate. So I was really, really lucky that she did that.
That's amazing. Not only that, that sort of just came out of, left field for you, what an
Yeah,
incredible, generous, amazing gift, but that it's somebody that you already had a connection with. You weren't tight
yeah,
friends, but, you were once removed and in each other's orbit. And that, she was healthy and passed all of the screening and all of the necessary steps. It's an amazing story. It's kind of a small miracle out of your personal story.
yeah. Because honestly, if I didn't have that offer, I don't think I would have been able to really move forward. And so we were very grateful for her. In fact, she was inspired because her husband was a sperm donor for a couple, and she wanted to help a family as well. And she just had kind of silently followed me and Chris's story. And so when she saw that blog, she wanted to jump in and help, which is, like you said, a huge miracle and blessing.
And how did your relationship develop? How did it, develop over time from being Facebook friends to, we would love to hear a little bit more about the type of relationship that you grew together.
Oh yeah. So I mean, over those months, obviously I'm going to like every appointment that I could because she's only 4 hours away. So all of the big appointments I was there for. We were having dinner, we were hanging out, and honestly, we clicked. Like we totally got along. She's very similar to me and Chris. Her and her husband have an awesome relationship. And he was super supportive, which is another thing that's really awesome because I have come across a lot of surrogates who offered to help, and then if they wanted to help, but then like a family member kind of was like, I don't know that I feel comfortable with you doing that, and they kind of back out. So I've had that happen too, before she offered. And so for her and her family and her husband and everyone to be supportive and rally around her, which I think is important as well, helped our relationship. And, fast forward to now, we have a great relationship and we go and visit them all the time as well.
You've spoken quite a bit about, how surrogacy is the reason that you have what you have. And certainly, it's the reason you have a child and a family life now. And, all made possible through surrogacy. What do you think, to your point maybe about some of those folks who initially showed interest but didn't have the personal or familial support around them to be able to do it? What do you think people actually misunderstand the most about surrogacy? And not only about surrogacy, but also tied to, you know, individuals with disabilities on top of it. Because a lot of women, a lot of families, men, women, couples go through an endeavor to build a family through surrogacy because of the medical need, right? I mean, more often than
Oh
not because
yeah.
of medical need. So what do you think some of the big misconceptions are around surrogacy that you wish more people were informed about?
Well, I one of the main questions I get is she yours, like biologically yours? I get that all the time. And I think a lot of people assume that she isn't because I didn't give birth to her. But what people don't understand is it's actually my egg and Chris's sperm. They make the embryo, and then they have a embryo transfer to the surrogate. And so that embryo is genetically me and Chris's, Chris's mine. So that would be definitely the number one misconception that I hear because I get that question a lot. Um, so there's that. Um, I don't know. I think a lot of people um, think that it's difficult for a surrogate. I mean, it is difficult for a surrogate, but a comment I often get is, "How can the surrogate just give them the baby like it's theirs because they carried it?" But a lot of surrogates understand that, obviously they're doing this for a gift and it's what they love to do and they want to do it to help another family. And it's a beautiful thing to hand over this baby and have a relationship and with the family and things like that. So I think people are just don't understand the relationship and really what it's like.
Yeah, I think they also bring their own emotional bias, right, to their
Right.
opinion. They feel like surrogacy would not be for them, and fair enough, right? It certainly is not
Yeah.
something for everybody. But those who endeavor to become surrogates certainly have a much different point of view about it. And I find, in my world of, 30 plus years of family building, I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that surrogates are sort of down and out, right? They're kind of on the heels of some type of desperation, and this is how they are going to overcome their own particular circumstance. But as you showcase, and I can bring thousands of examples to bear, these are just superb, healthy, educated, successful, generous people.
Oh, yeah.
And your surrogate did this as a gift with no compensation, right? So
Yeah.
I think that that's another misconception about surrogacy, is that women are motivated for other reasons other than wanting to do something that's a win-win.
Yeah, and I don't know if any other surrogates can, I mean, or any other parents can relate to this who use the surrogate, but a huge thing that I get is that I was selfish for, pursuing surrogacy because there's kids who need a home and I should just adopt. I get that a lot. And what I tell people is that there's multiple ways to make a baby. You can do it naturally if you're lucky enough to be able to do that, or surrogacy, but it shouldn't fall on the hands of only people who are not fertile to, or who aren't able to have a baby on their own to be the ones to adopt, and not people who can make a baby on their own. Does that make sense? Like, I don't know if
Oh,
you,
I hear that all the
yeah,
time, and generally, my response to that often is, have you tried to adopt? Do you know what's
yeah,
involved in that, and the
exactly.
challenges and difficulties and setbacks? I mean, there's so many people that ultimately turn to surrogacy because of the failure to adopt.
Yeah, I don't think people, I think people literally think that you go to like the kid baby store and you pick one out and, that's your kid, and it doesn't work that way.
It doesn't work that
Um,
way, right? Right.
and fostering doesn't work that way either. I mean, I have friends who are foster parents, and they're like, it is not normally an outlet that you use to just become a parent, because the goal of being a foster parent is for the kid to go back to their parent, once their parent is able to take them back. It's the goal is not for you to adopt, so that can be a very emotionally challenging way to go through being a parent as well. And again, I feel like, why not say that to somebody who's having sex to have a baby? They may be having a baby in a different way, but they're pursuing, having a baby as well. So why not say that to them? And I just feel like it's only said to people who are having trouble having their own children. And I just don't think that's a very fair thing to say or do.
I couldn't agree with you more. And that's just one of the reactions that some of the more negative reactions that you experienced when you shared with your audience that you were going to build a family this way, right? What other kinds of reactions did you get from your online audience?
Well, I want to say that I'm going to say some negative comments, but like overwhelmingly, it was positive. Like, there was a lot of people very excited. It was very positive, but there was a lot of people, especially when the stories came out that we were having a baby, that she was pregnant. That when it was in the news, then under these news articles, there's comments, right? Obviously, and these commenters are not my followers, so they don't know me or know my function or know my life or my situation, and all they see is quadriplegic, having a baby. And the comments were like so rude. It was just a lot of like things saying that I was selfish for having a baby because I couldn't be a mom. I this kid isn't going to have a good life because of my disability. And that was like an overwhelming, like, negative thing that people were saying. And luckily, I have very thick skin. I could care literally zero what people who don't know me or my life think about it. But the problem is, when people say those things, they're saying it and it affects other people. It affects other people in my spinal cord injury community. That if these people really think that we can't be parents because we're wheelchair users, that's a problem. So that's one reason that I love that I'm putting it out there. And what I would do is I would literally go in those comment sections and be like, "Hi, it's me." And I don't think they didn't expect me to actually respond, but for one, again, they hear the quadriplegic, they think I can't move whatsoever. But beyond that, people don't know the support system that I have. So it's not just me, it's a village. For example, there can be a thing, like, if it was literally just Chris, if Chris was by himself, he could have a baby and be a father. So why is me being included in that, scenario making it more difficult? It's actually making it easier, because of all the things that I can do. So it was just a lot of educating, and there was a lot of people who thought I was selfish, and there was a lot of that, yeah.
Yeah, I saw that too, which is so unfortunate. Well, maybe
Yeah.
this is a great opportunity for you to share, like, okay, sure, you're a wheelchair user, but how is parenthood different for you than somebody else? Like, how would you describe how it is different for you and how it's wonderful for your daughter?
Yeah, so like I would say the hardest part, like out of her whole childhood, was when she was just crawling and not able to stand. I cannot just lean over, put my arms around her, and then sit back up. So I couldn't like pick her up off the ground. So that was like the most difficult stage, but that stage doesn't last very long. So obviously I had help and things like that, but I could get her out of the crib because I didn't have to bend over. I guess I should say this. I forgot. I had an accessible crib that a furniture maker built me. So I went to him and we told him what we wanted, and we actually used the old crib of my surrogate's child that she has. So she gave us her um, crib, and then we took it to the furniture maker. And what he did was put basically legs on it so that I could roll under it. And so I would be basically have her crib like on top of my lap so I could lean over and grab her and put her to bed and snuggle with her and things like that. So that crib was great to have. Um, but yeah, just the picking up off the ground stage was difficult. But the more she got independent, the more she could do, and she could pull herself up on my wheelchair. Like she would grab the wheel and stand up, or she would grab the back of it. I have a bar in the back, and she actually learned to walk pretty easily using my chair because she could hold on to the back of it, and I would slowly, slowly roll, and she would walk. And there's a little tiny video of that on YouTube as well. But motherhood's been great. I mean, there's all those little things that are difficult, but again, I have got Chris, I had my mom, and now she's like got the best life and she loves me being in a wheelchair. She thinks it's the coolest thing ever, actually. She loves when her friends ask questions and when people come up on the playground and ask, she wants to answer. She loves getting rides on my lap. The girl never has to really walk anywhere. I told her, I was like, one day, when we go to, like, for example, we've been to Disney World twice and she gets to just ride on my lap. I'm like, all these other kids have to walk all day long. Like, I was like, one day you're gonna get too big and you're gonna have to do that. So she's almost 10 and she's still taking rides. So she'll get to the age though that she'll have to walk everywhere. So we'll see how that goes. But she's had a great life and we have a great relationship. So it's been awesome.
Rachel, as you're describing this and you're talking about life with your daughter and Chris, and you're describing the negativity, some of the negativity that you had to read in the comments from detractors. I'm
Hmm.
just thinking, what a beautiful gift to have given your daughter the perspective of what life is with a
Oh
disability.
yeah.
Forever she has a different point of view about the richness that can be a life worth living if you've got a disability. Things that the rest of us perhaps never think about. Like forever she will have a worldview that is shaped through the eyes of a daughter of a mom with a disability, that it has been positive and beautiful and full and rich. And that's a real gift.
Yeah, and what's cool about her is well, a lot of things, but she knows how lucky she is because she really does have a really good life with so many people that love her. She gets to do a lot of really fun and cool things, and that's one thing that she loves is that she has parents that love each other so much. And I think, in this world, there's a lot of kids who don't have that. They might have, you know, a family that's broken and but I'm sure they have people that support them, but she knows that she's lucky because she has this family that's all together. Her parents love each other and she's in this like bubble of love. And so she's very lucky, and also she is so empathetic, almost to a fault. Like I have to tell her you can't bring other kids' problems home and have it affect your life that much. But she really is so empathetic to people around her, her friends, other adults, and she just wants to help. And I think one day she's going to find a job that is really into helping people, whether it's people with disabilities or kids or anything. But that girl really cares about other people, and that I love about her.
Well, I think that that's goodness, do we need that right now in this world? We need a lot more
Oh, yeah.
empathy, patience, understanding, and willingness to reach out and help. And,
Yeah,
on
it's
that note,
definitely her.
what advice would you give to someone with a disability or in the disability community who's considering building a family through surrogacy?
Yeah, just to be open and hopeful and don't settle, find somebody that you really connect with that fits well with you in your life and just know that there's other moms and dads who are wheelchair users killing it and loving it and having good lives with their kids and there's really nothing to worry about when it comes to your abilities, especially if you have a support system. So I mean, obviously my advice would be to go for it because it's like the best thing ever. Being a parent.
And what's next for you guys?
So, so since you asked, so I actually, since I did surrogacy, I did IVF. I had embryos obviously created, and I have a few left over, and I really, really wanted to have or want to have another baby. So, and I tried the surrogacy route, but it's been really, really hard, to find someone. Like I said, there's a lot of people who want to do it, but then maybe they back out. And that's been the hardest part. That's just the reality of it because it is a big thing, obviously. It's a really big sacrifice for somebody to make to be a surrogate, though there are a lot of amazing, beautiful surrogates out there. I think I just decided that, hey, I'm a lot healthier than I was when I had Kaylee. My blood pressure has regulated. I don't take that medicine anymore and that maybe I want to experience pregnancy on my own. And so I have decided that maybe I will move forward and do some IVF and try to get pregnant myself. And we'll see how that goes.
Well, that's super exciting. Wow. So
Yeah.
your medical condition actually has improved and evolved over time. So you're no longer on some of those meds that were a detriment to carrying a pregnancy previously.
Right. So I'm off that medicine and I'm a lot stronger. It's crazy how like the injury changes even years later. I mean, I don't want to say that I'm like healing and I'm like gonna walk again or anything like that. But like my arms, my triceps are way stronger. My blood pressure is better. I'm a lot more independent than I was in those early years. And so I think it's just an opportunity for me to experience that. And, when I talked to the doctors, they were a lot more like this could work than they were the first time, because of those medicines. So yes, we'll see what happens.
Well, I think that that's a beautiful, beautiful story. And, when your daughter grows up, what do you hope that she's learned from you through all of this?
Well, I hope that she's learned to be compassionate, but the thing is, I know that she already has, and I know that she always will be. And I love that she really has that in her, and I know that she's going to grow up and change the world. Like, she's going to help people and bring smiles to everyone's faces. And I know that she's become more empathetic and helpful because of me and my situation and the wheelchair. And it's really added a lot to her life, and I can't wait to see what she does when she's older.
Well, you are a true inspiration, and what an amazing personal story and an example of what it really means to be handed lemons and to make the
Thank
most
you.
extraordinary, sweetest lemonade from it. So
Oh, yes.
I'm so inspired by you, your story, your tenacity, your strength, your love, and your want to just build a full and rich life for you and your family. What an inspiration. Well, Rachel, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank
I
you for
have no
having
doubt
me.
that our listeners really learned quite a bit and became inspired by your story. And if you had one parting note to share with them, what would it be?
No, just live life, don't, harp on the little things. I've learned to not stress out about little stuff because of big stuff happened to me. So, just be positive and it's okay to have a bad day. Like that's my main advice is that if you have a bad day and the little stuff does get to you, it doesn't mean that you're not a good person. Everybody has bad days, but just try to, leave it on that day and wake up the next day and have it be a new day and bring some positivity to that day.
Well, thank you. Words well said.
Thank you so much for having me.
in for another aha moment after an extraordinary guest today. And there are so many lessons to take away from this conversation. And gosh, I could pick and choose from so many of those lessons. But more than anything, in something that I personally take to heart, is the reminder and the need to reinforce this notion that storms are temporary. They pass. And, you could be in the midst of a little rain shower of a storm or, a Category 5 hurricane. And sometimes it's just so hard to realize and believe that this too shall pass. But they do, and they will, and they have, and they will again. And so for all of us that are facing life's challenges, and in the moment when it can just seem so rough and so gloomy and so dark, there's always a light at the end of the tunnel, and the storm will pass, and there's a hope and a richness and a real positive, life that can be lived on the other side of the mountains that need to be climbed. So listeners, please take that away from today's show and realize that there's always a brighter day ahead if you're living in a dark moment. Thanks for listening, and until next time, take good care.
At Conceivabilities, we believe that everyone who wants to become a parent can. Our agency has helped build thousands of families for nearly 25 years. Whether you are an intended parent ready to fulfill your family destiny, a surrogate answering your calling, or an egg donor wanting to expand what's possible in your life, we are your people. See how matching matters. Learn more by joining our Surrogacy Learning Center community at surrogacylearningcenter.conceivabilities.com.